Wonderful, wonderful. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I know you heard that, but here we are again. This is the, what month is it? May 2022 Jupyter Community Call. I'm Isabella. I don't always introduce myself, but I'm trying to remember. I hang out in various Jupyter communities, so I'm happy to have you all here. Some faces I know, some I don't know, so that's always exciting. This, if you don't know, is a place to kind of just celebrate what people are doing, share ideas, but the main focus is that we're working across communities and trying to build those connections. But of course, there's a few things that I have to remind you. Some of you have heard this many times. One, calls are recorded. Zoom just told you that, but just keep it in mind, whatever that means for you. Two, this is a Jupyter community event. We're held to the Jupyter Code of Conduct. You can find that at any time at jupyter.org/conduct. This includes me, if that's ever relevant. And third, I'm trying to remember, correct me if I pronounce your name wrong. I one day will have magical omnipotent name pronouncing powers, but until then, I will need your help and I would rather respect you as much as I can. So yep, that's what we're doing. And basically what we're gonna do, my usual thing here is we have an agenda. I believe I've linked it in the chat, that we're just going to go down the list on there. It's a pretty empty agenda today, even though we do have some items. So if you feel inspired at any point, if there's something that you want to share that you made, that someone else made, that you just thought was really cool, any kind of announcements, feel free to add it and we can moderate as we go. I think we have time today. So with that, we will begin. The first thing on our list is the shout outs, the reports, the celebrations, all these kind of short things that don't need discussion. So I have a few on here, so I will get started, but feel free to add as I'm talking because I'll check again. I think we're actually going to be talking about this more based on the agenda. I just wanted to give a shout out to the security team for rolling out new documentation on the Jupyter vulnerability handling process. I know that that has been a long time coming because they've given some really cool shares on this call before, and it was really awesome to like see the writing and see the details. I enjoyed reading it, but maybe I'm just a nerd. I'd recommend giving it a review. Two, I wanted to say the Jupyter Community Building Committee, Jupyter Community Workshops call for proposals has been extended. So you still, I believe, have another week because it's June 6th. Yeah, to apply for that if you have any interest. I, full disclosure, don't have all the details about that, but someone else on this call might. So if they want to add anything now, they're free to.
Thank you, Isabella. My name is Gail Allington, as you can see in my little box there. If I have not already met you, I'm the Jupyter Community Events Manager at NumFocus. So I believe Isabella put in the link to the blog, but what I just posted in the chat is the actual application. And so basically we've extended this until next Monday. And we are looking for, we talked about like the new rollout from the security team, like these types of things, like any issues, things that you would like to work through. These are exactly the ideas we're looking for. So that's been extended. You have up until, like I said, the end of Monday, but it could be a funded, we're looking for ideas for a funded workshop, 5,000, up to 5,000 for online and up to 20,000 to in person. So these are small groups and we're looking to engage our community. So that's my big rah-rah. Anyways, but please, even if you have not a fully thought out idea, please get that ball rolling. And even if you don't, maybe if you think of someone that might, please share that link with them. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'm glad that you had more info to say. I wasn't sure if it was just going to be me saying, read the blog post. So that's always cool. Great. I do see we have one more thing on the short reports from Mike, even though this could be a longer discussion, I think, if you want, but yeah.
Hi, this is just a quick question to the community. I will be organizing training at Oxford from intermediate/advanced scripter for interactive computer computing for biomedical researchers. And I'm going to do a 1 or 2 hours workshop next month. And I will basically cover some of the infrastructural changes, some of the interactive widgets, and all the cool stuff that has happened since many people first had an opportunity to work with Jupyter. But I'd very much appreciate if any of you has any pointers, any cool projects that you would like to include, even just as a link in the presentation that would be of interest to biomedical researchers. I'd be very happy to share that, and that's, I guess, an opportunity. So that's it.
So I will maybe suggest to look a tiny bit on the Napari side, which I wrote in the notes. There is like the Napari and Jupyter community are relatively close, and Napari does a lot on biomedical and imaging. So by reaching out there, you might be able to find interesting things to talk about.
Sounds interesting. Thanks.
Can I ask, what do you know what the, since we don't have anything else in the report, intermediate and advanced, what kind of level of things you're like, what does that mean? What kind of tasks? Because that might help me know if there's something.
So by intermediate and advanced, I mean people who already know how to use Notebook, and there's lots of training focusing on that. But setting up a Jupyter Notebook or Jupyter Lab to work in an HPC environment is something a little bit higher, and many people do that kind of incorrectly. They just like rare security, that they will just wildcards allow all IP addresses. They will allow the turn off the authentication and turn off the HTTPS. So things of that, like basics, and then also creating your own custom visualizations which are relevant to biomedical research. So there are things like 3D processing, 3D graphs. There are things like genetics, bioinformatics, relevant things, lots of different areas. I'm trying to give an overview, but also give some hands-on experience in migrating to kind of novel techniques rather than sticking with Jupyter Notebook version 5 or 6, which some people still use as their only interface for Jupyter.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Romeo.
Yeah, not sure if that is of interest, but I'm giving talks about AI and deep learning in biomedical and genomics data at universities. So if you are interested, I can run this also, if you like, on Jupyter Lab with a little demo.
I think it would be very cool to touch base on the outline of the talk that you are giving and exchange maybe some ideas. That would be very interesting. And do I get right that you also work with the Lyra team?
Yes, yes, I'm with Alex and Martha and formerly Luciano and all those. Yeah.
So that's like this is a lot of the center members were expressing interest in being able to work pipelines and workflows using like graphical interfaces like that, but because it's not very well integrated with HPC environments, it still causes some friction, and getting people to learn that there are some extensions which enable that is also part of the aim. And I know that there are some extensions, but maybe there are more which I do not know. So maybe we should just create a list of interesting extensions relevant to the field. Anyways, just
okay. So do you want me to ping you later, or how shall we proceed?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's touch base by email.
Okay, so I'll try to find out your email.
Yeah, if it's deploying on HPC and Jupyter Hub and things like that, I would suggest to reach out to Chris Holdgraf, who is the director of Try2C, which is mainly focused on deploying hubs for organizations. And I know some of you know that, but maybe for people listening in later. And he's in Europe right now, so depending on when you do that, maybe you can reach to him and he may show up because you may not want to have to maintain something that complicated, and twice to see specialize in that with folks like UV who are like really know what they're doing and can automatically update the hub for you, make sure there are no security issues, and they have researcher in mind. So it's it might be a good thing to at least mention that during the workshop.
This is an excellent point. I knew about the organization and I know what they're doing, but I didn't think to include that in the agenda, and that really solves a lot of problems. So I will do that. Thanks.
Cool. I'm also throwing some things in the notes for you. One of the ones I was going to throw in for anyone who may not know, though, is I was actually going to throw in the awesome Jupyter and awesome Jupyter Lab extensions, but I think you already know they exist, Mike, because I think you've made PRs there. So but this is more being shared for everyone now. But yeah, awesome.
We need to update them. I think many of them are a little bit outdated, but we can do that.
Yeah, I wasn't sure, but I know that it's been, I don't know, they've been really cool lists for sure. But also, I'm trying to think too. I know we've had things on these calls, but nothing immediately comes to mind for me. So no, that's a good question. Cool. I will keep typing this up at some point. Are there anyone inspired for their own short report celebration? We spent a little more time on discussion today, but I think we're fine. Are you excited? Did a project you're excited about release a new version? Did your cat not wake you up really early this morning? I don't know. Maybe that one's a little too personal. I'll be quiet for 10 seconds to let you decide.
So the deadline for draft of SciPy proceeding is over. So I've submitted my draft. Which doesn't mean the paper is finished, because there is still a lot of bold things that say, please add reference here or expand there, but at least the draft is submitted. And so now I need to polish things and starting to get ready for SciPy, because beginning of mid-July is going to be coming really, really fast. I'm looking forward to see a lot of folks in person. I don't know who is going to be at SciPy this year beyond me. Yeah, good.
Congrats. Oh, go ahead, Gail.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick announcement. There's going to be a sprint at the PyData London that's coming up in a couple of weeks. Darius and Vidar will be the facilitators on that. And so if you happen to be in London and want to do a sprint, please check us out. And I will be there too. So I'll actually be able to meet some of the community. Oh, thank you, Matthias.
And Sylvain is keynoting, and Sylvain is one of the core Jupyter developer, steering council member, French person, really friendly.
Yeah, he's a keynote this year.
That's awesome. That's a great announcement. Thank you for sharing. I had no idea. This is why these calls are good for me. Y'all are doing amazing stuff and I have no idea about it a lot of the time. I just am, yeah. Wow, great. Okay. This is your last chance, y'all. You can still add things to the agenda, but if you want to get excited, I need like I always think I need the Jeopardy theme for this or something, but alas, no one wants to hear me saying that. Okay, awesome. Then we will go on to the main agenda. Right now, we just have something from Matthias, though I have some other things I can share if we get to it. So, ready, Matthias?
Tiny bit more news from last month. So we are still trying to push the security work forward, trying to standardize the process around reporting vulnerability issues. Again, as you know, everything which is security related is really opaque because we can't discuss it publicly in case there is a vulnerability. We try to outline a process so that it's easier both for community members and developers. So we developed a guideline which will still change. There is a pull request against the Jupyter website to make it part of the Jupyter website. And we'd love to have folks feedback on that. Does it help you for your organization? Do you want to participate? And especially, you don't need to be a security expert, because one of the main things that we have difficulty with is just following up on reports and making sure that that when we have a report, there is a response, even if the report is wrong, even if it's not a security issue, and also have a single place where people can know whether there is there have been a security vulnerability and how to update and so on and so forth. So if you have any interest in security, go to either the PR on the Jupyter website or on the security repo of Jupyter and talk with us. Tell us what you believe would be good for your organization, what you would like to see more publicly disclosed, or what would help you with everything Jupyter and security related. We were thinking also of making a workshop, but we did not submit one. The reason being that the security team is right now 4 people and we're super busy. Our schedule is already packed, so we don't have the time to organize a workshop or a discussion or something like that. So if you have ideas, about we would like to hear about X, Y, and Z on security and Jupyter, or something like that, the member of the security might not be able to organize that, and maybe it's a tiny bit short to do that for this workshop call, but that's again something we are interested in. Let us know what workshop you would like to have on security, and we can try to find people to help us organize that.
Can I actually?
Go ahead.
No, you continue. It's your share.
I was just going to say that's it. So
I was actually going to ask if we could look at the roles outlined in that document. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I have some questions about them actually, and I can share my screen if that's.
Yes, go ahead. We can look at the roles.
Yeah, I was just curious because especially since you called out not needing security knowledge. I think, are you talking about the coordinator role in that case?
Yeah, mostly what happened is that we have a security mailing list that currently, for technical reason, can only have 10 people on it. We are looking at how to increase that. But basically, we don't want people to have to go on a repository and find how to open a security vulnerability on a specific repository, especially when we don't know which repository it can be. So what we want is already, at the Jupyter level, maybe higher at some point, if other projects want to contribute to that, have a bunch of folks that would be, I'm going to use, the business term of being on call, which means that you monitor the mailing list. And if someone send a vulnerability report, you acknowledge the vulnerability. We don't ask you to judge the vulnerability at all, but just to try to open an actual advisory on the right Jupyter repository. And every week check whether the developers of the repository have responded to this report. So obviously, on this mailing list, because it's an open mailing list, we get a bunch of spam. Like, we want to help you improve the SEO of your website. That you obviously see that it's not a security report, you just ignore it. Just that, you don't need to have any knowledge on security. This is something you could be helpful for. You don't need to know about security. You just need to basically triage incoming requests and send them to the right developers.
Okay, interesting. I was reading when you were saying that, you were saying opening it like on the correct project. So should these, well, I guess this is not actually maybe relevant for everyone, so maybe I'll hold back. No, I found this really interesting to read. I have not gotten to see this process detailed so explicitly before. So once again, maybe it's nerd stuff, but I thought that was interesting. Do you want to talk to any of the other roles?
We don't. It's mostly, it's trying to have the right vocabulary, because what's happening right now is folks that make the report. Like if I find a vulnerability, I send a mailing, I send an email, and then I will open an advisory and I will fix it. So I'm doing all the roles.
Right.
And so it's really hard when you're part of all the roles to realize what folks in only one of those roles see and don't see, right? Yeah. And so we are trying to do that mostly so that the different parts of the vulnerability handling process are clearly delineated. And also, trying to spread the load across many people. And we discovered a number of things, like in particular, because I'm one of the person who was there when Jupyter was created. I have access to almost all the repository and organization on GitHub because I'm an admin, and someone else probably will not. And so those are things where we would like to have feedback. Like someone who try to step into the coordinator roles, and as part of the coordinator roles, they realize that they can't do X, Y, and Z. Because I won't realize that I'm not able to do that.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yes, so my question is, in this process, are the subsequent points reflecting the timeline? Or is it roughly, because like there is a point coordinator post the release and announcement dates? Does it happen before making a release? Is this correct?
So that's one of the difficulty we have, is that most of our process is open source, and most of the guidelines you find on other places are not about open source. And so when we publish a patch on GitHub, the patch automatically becomes public. And so there is a question that doesn't happen for proprietary product, which is, how do you handle patching the software and making the release? And most proprietary system will make the patch. They don't care, the patch is not public, they make the release, and maybe later they make it open source. For us, there is this weird things where we have to merge before releasing, and merging the vulnerability is making it public. And so there is this weird race condition, which socially we can't avoid. And so all this is like, that's why it's still guidelines. It's not completely like, we want to improve it. Those are things that we have to work through a couple of times to figure out how they will work. And of course, a lot of different Jupyter projects have different way of being managed. So we can't, we sometimes stay vague, because I know how IPython works, and I can do things in IPython that can't do in Jupyter Lab, because Jupyter Lab is built using CI and IPython is built on my machine. So I can do things with IPython that I can do with Jupyter Lab, and vice versa.
An issue that emerged several times was that users would complain that the changelog is missing for any specific tag which was published to address a security vulnerability. And sometimes they are not satisfied with an answer that there is no tag because it was published in a stealth mode to avoid disclosing the vulnerability early. I do not know whether this is a right call to discuss that, but have you considered adding a step of retrospectively adding the changelog for things which were already published?
So I think that's on a per project basis. If it were just me, I think that because usually, and in most cases, as soon as you push a fix which comes from a vulnerability handling process, it's visible in the commit log, and if we have attackers, they will be able to automatically detect that. Like they see a commit which comes from a GitHub advisory. The GitHub advisory doesn't have the same URL as issues, so it's completely obvious. And usually when you see the fix, you know what the issue is. Or you can reverse engineering what's the issue and how to make the attack. Plus, usually once, unless we have someone who ask for delayed of a publication of the detail because it was a number ago, there is no reason not to publish all the information as soon as the software is released. So For me, a security release is the same as a normal release, except it's time sensitive, which means as soon as you merge the result, the vulnerability fix, the vulnerability fix should probably have the changelog as well in it. It's a normal PR, except it's private until merged. Then you should have as a vulnerability in everything. And even something else that you should be able to do is you get CVE numbers. When you work on a vulnerability, you are allowed to publish the CVE number itself. Say, for example, Jupyter lab is affected by CVE 2022-5150, because there is no information itself in the CVE. And that is information that businesses rely on to get ready to update. So it's sometimes even important to say, we will release a fix for this CVE in 10 days, 15 days, a month, or we don't know soon, so that at least companies can put their CVE number in their database. So for me, and especially in open source, obscurity is not more security.
Can I ask, did I misread at some point? I thought there was some kind of timeline on a document somewhere, though, that said, like, regardless of what's happening this many days after the initial report, we say something, or did I make that up?
No, usually the industry standard is 90 days. The industry standard, unless the reporter asks for embargo or things like that. Usually, if you look at we had many reports from organizations like the Google security team, I don't remember, and so on and so forth. And a lot of those organizations have the standard that, and it's to force, usually it's to force vendors to fix. It's basically, once we send you the report that there is a vulnerability, if you don't reply to us, or regardless of what you do, in 90 days, this will become public. And so we have this guideline as well in this document to hold ourselves accountable. Like, if you send us something, it should be, with everything security, sometimes there are caveats, and you want to have a specific process. Once you send us something, we will try to hold ourselves accountable to the 90-day windows. We ask you not to publish before, because we might be working on it, but usually the reporter are in the loop and know what's happening. But basically, if we haven't done anything in 90 days, it's okay to publish it, because we should have done better. The other timeline that we have is trying, I don't remember exactly how much it is. I think it's 48 hours, something like, of open days, like workable days. When you send us a report, we try to tell you we received the report in 48 hours. Not whether the report is valid, not whether we will work on it, but at least, yes, we've got your mail, we are aware. So those are, I think, the only two timelines that we mentioned in this document.
Awesome, thank you for, I really appreciate you going in depth with this. This is really cool.
It's a really interesting problem.
Yeah, and I love hearing about these things, because they're definitely not, like, see, these are some of my favorites, right? They're not Jupyter specific problems, like we're solving them in a Jupyter context, but as you pointed out, most of your references when your team was working on this, right, had different circumstances, and that has left some experiments. So that's like, I just love hearing these things, and it's like, oh, well, now we have a reference in this space, and it's starting to work off each other.
And we can even go further on security and push, for example, a thing I would love to have on the Jupyter side is reproducible release, where people could take the code that we have on GitHub and remake the tarballs and wheels files and obtain the same bytes for bytes, like to make sure that the developer's machine have not been compromised. So it doesn't prevent the code itself on GitHub to have a backdoor. But right now, a lot of folks, when they do pip install or conda install, like nobody checks that the code which is actually in the wheel files is the one we push on GitHub. So there is a supply chain attack possible here. And for IPython, that's something that I've been trying to do a lot. Like you should be able to go on your machine, get rerun the same command that I ran on my machine and get exactly the same byte for byte files. So we are just at the beginning of the security process.
And those meetings are every other week? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's every other week on Tuesday, slightly later than this call. It should be on the Jupyter calendar. So you should be able to find it like this meeting by subscribing.
Yeah, I botched the link. Let me fix that. But yes, it is on the community calendar. Awesome. Does anybody have any other thoughts on security stuff? I mean, broadly, it sounds like we've opened it. Okay, there's a working link.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. No, yes, this is good. It's been so cool to watch this grow. I think the next thing we have on the list is also Matthias, but I don't know if you want to speak more or, yeah. I think you added something about SciPy.
Yeah, I don't, it's hard to follow everything which is happening. So I was wondering also for is the Jupyter community organizing something for SciPy? Is there something specific, sprints, get together? Do we have some folks that are there for the first time that want to discuss specific things? Do we want to have maybe a lightning talk about what's new in Jupyter at some point or in the plenary notes? I don't know. I was just going to ask, I think that Gail, you will probably be there, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So we're starting to put some thoughts together to that because JupyterCon isn't going to happen until next year. And I'm now good. That's one of the reasons why I'm going to be going to London is I'm going to be doing some site visits. But just a couple cities in there. But that's the beauty of Europe, right? You can take a train and you get just like New England, where I grew up. Anyways, a couple hours and you're in a whole different state. But anyways, we are looking for ideas for that. So Matthias, if you have specific things or anyone on this call, I'm going to put my email in the chat. Please feel free to shoot me any thoughts you have about stuff you'd like to see at upcoming conferences, because they're the best place to kind of piggyback those things.
Do you know if we are planning some swag at SciPy or something like that? I mean, non-focus is obviously making stickers or similar things. I know that a couple of years ago, Jupyter itself did t-shirts. I know that something that we did at JupyterCon was to try to have most of the core Jupyter contributors have the same t-shirt with a bright orange, so that they could be recognized. I mean, obviously, we can try to do that at SciPy as well. At SciPy, I think we had name tags that were Jupyter branded, like magnetic clips that you could put.
Yeah, I think my welcome package, I got a name tag and a t-shirt and a bunch of stickers that was in my welcome package. That's a great point, Matthias. I am, you don't know this about me, but I'm kind of the queen of swag. I've created gift bags for several events. So I think the key for any type of swag is what people are going to use. I think sometimes when people, they just want to slap their logo on things. I used to work for Subaru, and I'll never forget One time for a dealer conference, they had me put logos on the urinal cakes. So nothing quite like that. But you know, if you think of items that you would like to see, because that's the key to swag, right? Something that's cheap and usable and big enough for you to put your logo on.
That is an interesting story.
I'm sorry, and that was recorded too. So
I mean, it's up to you.
I mean, I apologize if that
no.
crossed any lines for anyone.
Yeah, I don't, are people aware of anything else? I'm personally not aware of any events, Matthias. I remember in Jupyter Lab call probably a month ago, there was some discussion about probably a tutorial, but I really haven't heard anything since. So I have no idea if anything's happening.
You know, it's also me asking because, you know, there is more and more happening, and I was hoping to also get some information. Well, I know that there is now Euro SciPy in Switzerland in September. I don't know if we do anything there. But that's about it. Like, it's mostly I was going to be at SciPy Texas in July, and I was wondering if anything was planned.
Not at this moment, but I know that we will, because I'm working with Jim on that. We'll put something together.
And a pen drive with Jupyter Lab installed on it. I think we've all learned to not trust USB keys distributed at conferences. So I won't, like, you can give me as many USB sticks as you want, it will go directly in the trash.
Right after the security discussion too, right? Go ahead, Romeo.
I just noticed that Euro SciPy is in Basel. That's actually where I am. So if you need help there, just let me know. It's walking distance for me.
I mean, it could be a great thing to actually distribute thumb drives and have them, you know, display something. Never put your USB drive on your laptop. It's a security compromise. It's a security risk. That would be a good. I mean, I'm not sure it's a really good publicity, but it's it could make some points in some areas. I remember last 24, no, I don't remember, PyCon Cleveland, I believe. One of the vendors had lock picking kits and locks for security. And you had to pick the locks to win things.
Interactive, how fun. Yeah,
I mean, we could have, you know, 1 or 2 lock picking kits and ask people to find a security vulnerability during the conference and give that to the first people who find it. I don't want to attract too many views because I'm sure there are security issues in Jupyter.
You heard it here first, right? Yeah. No. I just, you know, I'm happy to update you if I run into any more in other calls I'm in, but yeah, I don't know any right now. Cool. Well, it's coming soon though. You're absolutely right. So with that, before I added something that I can share to the agenda, but I want to give people a moment. Were these wonderful discussions so brilliantly inspiring to some of you that you want to share something else now? We'll sit in silence for a few seconds. Okay, not even the pressure of silence. Wonderful. Well, in that case, I'm going to share 2 resources that I think are really cool in the Jupyter space, but I don't hear talked about a lot, namely because for those of you who may not have encountered me somewhere, I am at least theoretically a designer, if not by some metric, I don't know. And so, you know, I work with not a lot of other designers, and so there's not always a lot of resources talked about, like, you know, what are we thinking about what users do, or like, where are we getting feedback? How are we kind of, you know, testing the work we're doing with people who use it, you know, maybe as often as like all day for their work most days, or just as infrequently as like I just pop in sometimes when someone sends me a thing that I don't know how to, I don't know, right? So yeah, I'm going to share my screen and give you a quick look at the Jupyter surveys repo first. So I think some of you are aware of this, but right on GitHub, we have Jupyter surveys, which records any major, I think, Jupyter related survey. That was perhaps redundant, but it's not a trick name. That's exactly what it is. The thing that I like about it too is there's some really different surveys. I think all of them have listed the questions that were asked too. So I like to point to this too, because it's both good for like if you want the results, but I've also had people ask me like, hey, I'm trying to, you know, write a survey for a different project I'm working on. I don't really know what to do. I haven't written one of these before. I've also sent them to places and been like, oh, you know, here's some examples of questions, even though these are not super like general community surveys for the most part. But yeah, I think they're really cool. And when you go into any of them, I believe you just have a, let's go, yeah. You have a README that explains who did it, what happened, and kind of a general overview. So I really like these. I think I think that it can be useful to remember, like, some of these questions have been asked before and have answers, right? I find it's easy to forget that history when I'm just kind of moving forward. So that's my first shout out. Do we have thoughts on Jupyter surveys? Going once, going twice. I want to run a survey, Isabella, something like that. Okay, cool. Maybe you all knew about this and just everybody's looking at it silently, and I have no idea that it's actually a community resource that's constantly being used. But regardless, oh, go
A
on.
suggestion I would have is to have an iPad with an open survey at SciPy or other conference, or when you have iPad and NumFocus, and ask people when they come, can you enter, like, can you quickly reply to this 5 or 6 question survey on Jupyter?
Do we know what questions we want?
No, but if you want people to, if you want to reach a different kind of users and the one that follow Twitter or something like that, that may give you, you know, people who wander around booths. I mean, I'm guessing everybody knows Jupyter, but you may get a different sample population than the online one.
Yeah.
And NumFocus more generally may want to run something quickly like that. You know, if people are in person, you can ask, you know, maybe 6 to 10 questions maximum, something rapid, like you can do rapidly. Could be a good thing. I don't know if NumFocus has iPad they can secure to the table when folks are around.
So is that not already done? Is because I guess I just assumed, I haven't attended one of the events yet, but that information when people register, because that was my thought, is that they had something similar with an iPad or something where you quickly boom, 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 so you can get some demographics.
I don't. There is maybe some information in the SciPy registration thing, but I don't remember having seen an iPad at the NumFocus booth for a long time.
Okay.
And one of my personal recommendations for running surveys too is just having a really specific goal. It helps you keep your questions short. It helps you have takeaways. So I think the other thing is, I'm not sure, it's a good point, Matthias, but if there's like something more specific maybe too than SciPy in terms of demographics, right? I think this could be, my guess would be anything from like, how do you engage with Jupyter stuff? Like, where do you get your info? I would be interested in that, even just with running these calls, because we have so many different channels and I'm not actually that confident that I am reaching people on most of them. It could be as specific as like, hey, we want to know, maybe this is a controversial one. We want to know which interface, you know, you go to as your default, right? Like, I think they could be that simple, but also really informative. And that's a good point. I always forget about conferences because I don't know what I'm doing. So if that's something people are interested in, I know it's a short timeline, but if it's a short survey, that could actually be really interesting. Do people have other thoughts on that? I'm gonna open chat.
just that sometimes survey are not to ask people a question, but to tell them, though they don't realize that. Like, are you aware there is a Jupyter community call every end of every last Tuesday of the month at 5 p.m. European time? Like most people may say no, but now they know that it's there. I don't know.
Have you tried Jupyter Notebook version 7? Have you tried Jupyter Live?
Right. The questions
Oh,
are all just
cool.
promos.
Also, I noted that Jupyter Lab Team Compass repository has a survey from 2020, which I don't believe is in the main repo.
Let's see.
Should it be consolidated?
Oh, this is just this would be so nice. This is a question list, isn't it? I just remember I recognize these questions from the survey.
Yeah, we also have the
Awesome.
results somewhere.
The results are here. I know where the results are because I made that PR, but I don't think we had, so I made the PR, but I was not the one who handled the data at this point because it wasn't me. But actually that would be awesome because the questions are in the notebook, but it would be really nice to just have them listed on their own. Thank you for pointing that out. That does seem like a good, at the very least, adding that to Jupyter surveys, but also I'm curious. I guess, I don't know. Yeah, we'd see what we do. Thanks for pointing that out. Yeah. Oof. Good, more tasks for me. Cool. Any other survey thoughts before we move on? Cool. Oh, no, another thing in the chat. I will check just in case. Okay, yes.
It's
not
I would just love to consolidate all Team Compass's repository into a single repo.
With different branches. Oh, I guess not.
No. I mean, because you have 12 URLs if you want to look at 12 different Team Compasses from 12 different repositories. For me, you should have jupyter.org/Team Compasses and have all the information there for all the organization and everything. Because I can't find half of the information I want because it's on different URLs every time.
Yeah. Yes, I've definitely had that. And sometimes the question of, is it on a Team Compass? Is it on the main project repo? Does not help. But yeah, no, that's a good point. Maybe I'll put that on a future call thing. Let's talk about the Team Compass. I know they have like a template and stuff and we can look at, that would be interesting.
Yeah, the other thing which is security related is as a multiple organization in Jupyter make it impossible to do most of the security work. And I'd love to merge some organization together because otherwise you have to replicate what you do in many cases. I have to ping 4 people in every security report because I can't ping an organization, a team or things like that.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah. That sounds like quite a hill to battle up, perhaps, but a very good point.
Yeah. I'm not even trying to battle this one. I've gave the point several times, but it seemed that the easy things to do is to, I want to create something. I'm just going to create a new Jupyter organization. It's also, for contributing, for some contributors from private sectors, they have to ask for specific permission to contribute to some orgs. And so having more orgs makes that more difficult to them. So, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. This is what we're here for cross-community ideas. I think it's very relevant. Anyone want to follow up to what Matthias says? We're almost at time, so I can save this for another time too. Okay, no one's like, Matthias, your controversial take, but no. The last thing I want to show you today before we'll wrap up is it is under the Jupyter Lab main repo. I'm actually have always kind of wondered why, but there's a set of user stories for how people might interact with Jupyter things. And even though it is in lab and lab specific, I think this one was really cool. Right there, we have potential security. GitHub's trying to let me know. For those of you that don't know, user stories are a really common tool used by designers that kind of says like the format is generally as a, like you choose kind of some kind of category. I want to do some kind of task so that I can achieve this goal. And those can be really useful for figuring out, you know, what tasks do we want to prioritize first? How do we want to make this workflow work? All those kind of things, thinking about the end user and not just the development process. So I wanted to point it out because I know, for example, too, when people are like, when I'm talking to my family and they're like, what do you do all day, Isabella? And I'm like, gosh, how do I describe what do people do with this tool? This is also a great resource for that because it'll list things, right? So this one is specifically about real-time collaboration. And they're like, okay, so we have, you know, a researcher, how might they want to use it? How would you want to collaborate on a huge collaborative team, you know, that's truly global? What if you're just a student and you're trying to like turn in your homework or you're trying to work with other students? I shouldn't say just a student. That was, yeah, okay. You get the point that there's a range of people. So this is one that I really have never heard anyone say anything about because I think because it just lives under this, I would say quite random and perhaps misleading titled design directory of Jupyter Lab. But I found a lot of them relevant for multiple projects. So I like to shout it out every now and then and be like, hey, some people have actually written about what people are doing with this and you can kind of ground your work if that interests you. So yeah, I'm going to stop sharing and read the chat. Should the user stories be consolidated with the actual repo Jupyter Lab? Is there a Jupyter Lab design and not just a Jupyter design? And I remember this, yes. There's nothing in there. Yeah. This is not my doing.
There is something very interesting. There are very cool design wireframes for file browser in Jupyter Lab.
Oh, it did get added. That's fantastic.
Though, yeah, I think we do have a slight of an issue with not consolidating some things which are very spread thin in places which are not very accessible. So I only discovered the design stories that you showed like 2 years into contributing to Jupyter Lab because they were not very like not highlighted very well. So I don't know. I was thinking maybe there is a Jupyter docs, like a general docs with links to every single project. Maybe a design section which links to all these different repositories and sections of repositories could be very useful.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say I can only speak as someone who really stumbled into Jupyter like a couple years ago and found it very hard to find things. I could see that as being useful, particularly if you're a designer. It has been very hard to find like things that are related to that. So I could see that. But I think Matthias probably has an even better high level view of how this should work.
So I'm actually going to present something at SciPy about my last work of working on rethinking documentation and actually having the problem that each documentation is a separate repository and a separate website, which is one of my projects to basically build each library independently and merge them together into a single coherent documentation.
I can say as a longtime Jupyter user, but first-time developer, I can second what Matthias said about it being confusing about knowing where to go, which repo, and yeah, getting some of that information from a single place for sure.
So I don't want to hold anybody else, but if some of you want to, after the call, see a demo of what I'm working on, I can show it.
I would, but I also think we might run into, I'm not sure if we're going to run into another call or not. There might be an RTC meeting today, but I think they might have moved it again. So I'm not, let me check the calendar. But yes, cool. I'm glad that was inspiring to you all. I don't want to keep you if you have to run, just disclaimer there, if you need to go, feel free. Are there any final thoughts though? I don't want to cut anyone off. Final sounds so serious. Okay. Well, thank you for going on this adventure with me today. I will wrap it up then. I love when I come in and, you know, check 30 minutes before and find nothing on the agenda, but then we always find something to talk about because there is so much going on, even if the people haven't found their way here. So thank you. Thank you. Of course, there will be another call next month. It's at a weird time. In fact, I think it's a pretty unfriendly Europe time because I'm going to be trying out some different stuff. If you heard me talking at the beginning, per request to try some different time zones, check the community calendar for that, but I don't think it's very Europe friendly, to be honest with you. So that one probably won't be it long term. And the other thing I have for you is if you have any feedback, if anything broke, it's really good for me to know. I'm going to link my little feedback thing in the chat. No pressure, but that's the only way I know when things go, when things break. So, and of course, if you have any interest sharing in the future, please feel free to. Actually, I'm always hopeful that one day I will get a demo of Matthias's wonderful documentation solution, but I know that that's a work in progress. So we still have time. Community calls will keep happening. And yeah, they're going to keep going. Let me know also if you ever want to host. That would be cool too. I will stop rambling. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you had fun today.
Thank you.
Yeah. Where is the, I'm going to do the cliche, how do I stop recording?